some good speakers coming up. Simon is of course going to be the main person who's going to be talking about the project and what we're going to do together. We also have MRA here today, Malaysian Retailers Association. Sorry for the typo, my apologies. They are organizing a convention this Thursday, and at that convention they're bringing in all the retailers and getting them to network, to understand what is the challenges for retailers. Similarly, with this change of technology, change of directions that we are seeing, we want to see how we can stay competitive, how we can make sure that we use technology to earn and be able to grow our revenues. Many things we need to do that involve menial type of work, which we can make it into more efficient. So we are going to share with you one of the angles that we will do. So lunch is over. We will start soon with an opening address from the organizing chairman soon. He will give an introduction, exactly which angle we are coming from, and then we have Simon and Mr. Leong, who is also down with us. He will share a bit of perspective from the financing side of things, so that we have an angle from every angle. How do I move to the next slide? My name is Sukhdev. I am the Managing Director for Ambersoft. Ambersoft has been involved with document management, workflow. During COVID, of course, all of us had great challenges, but we were very lucky in a way that we were in a position where we are able to provide technology to improve the process. And that happened with the SPM examinations. So during the SPM exam, the national exams, teachers could not mark the papers because students are sitting for exams, and then how do you deliver the documents to them to mark? Ambersoft, with partnership with Percetakan Nasional, Hezri is here too. Hezri was very instrumental in getting this technology in place. Percetakan Nasional, of course, have national printers. Exams were set by students at the exam centers. They were brought to Balakong Processing Center. At Balakong Processing Center, our technology was used to scan, to redact the names, to remove sensitive information, so that the documents could be uploaded for the online marking system. And the government found it so effective, Lembaga Peperiksaan, they found it so effective that it's going to be the de facto way of doing things now. Yeah, because no one's going to go back to paper-based and sending documents for teachers to mark, bringing it back. It's all done online. So that's a very good example which we were involved with, which allowed us to facilitate digitization and transformation. So Ambersoft has always been involved with this for many, many years. Of course, when I spoke to Simon and his team in FLNT, we were very excited to find out that they were dabbling with AI. He's the founder, he and Petra. Both of them are founders of Accurait. They developed it, and then FLNT, which is a company, a larger entity, took over, and now it's going to take it to the next step. When we saw AI in operation, which he's going to share today with us, it blew me away, because as a document management company, we have been scanning documents, we have been capturing information, we have been extracting data, but this takes it to the next level. And with AI technology, with natural language processing, with machine learning, the AI is able to understand sentences and paragraphs and be able to formulate and say, look, this is a data point which would be of interest to the retailer or to the landlord, and it's able to extract that data and store it there. It even goes further than that. Say, I'm giving an example, sorry to spoil the what blew me away was that if I have 200 outlets in the country and I want to go and see a particular clause, demolition clause or the bank guarantee, I can just type in and say, give me all the leases that has this particular demolition clause, which he showed to me, and he was able to extract that particular part of the agreement and actually showed me for each lease what is the clause for that particular outlet for that particular location. Now that was a wow. That was like shit. Sorry. That was like wow. That's like, you know, how does he do that so easily and extract that? How many of you all have used ChatGPT? ChatGPT, yes. Yeah, assignments and letter writing, and you know, it's an amazing tool. And sometimes the results that you get, it's just like, where did this come from? How does he know? And I think that's why Google got panicked. You know, the guy who actually developed it, I don't know if you all heard that news, and the guy resigned. And he says, no, this is like a human, you know, but they are going to see how we can optimize it so that we can use it. You can't escape technology. It's just like when the railroads came, we adapted to the railroads. And then you had what do you call that, internet that came along, you could search for information. Now we are talking about the next generation. Those who get left out, those who do not get on board are going to be missing out on that. Similarly for Ambersoft, as a technology company, that was key for us too. How can we stay ahead of the curve and adapt and allow our customers to benefit from this? So I think, you know, that's where we are coming from, basically. So I actually have covered the items that I'm covering here for the organization. So in the early days, as coming back to leases, in the early days, you know, people were using diaries to keep track of what leases there are, when is it expiring. These are just 2 or 3 data points. Now we're talking 60 data points, 70 data points. After that, Excel came along, and then what I do came along, OCR, document management. Now is the next generation AI-based solution which can extract information. And of course, for organization, it's integrating it in the back end, you know, to other systems that you have in place. So we will touch on that. Simon will share with us and you know, give us a bit of insight so that we are aware. And this can be applied in all the different environments that we are going to be in. Yeah. Thank you so much. I'll hand over let me just introduce the speakers. Dr. Kasuma Satria, he's MRA Conference Chairman. Very happy to have him here. He's also the Human Resource Officer at Aeon. We all do shopping at Aeon, and they've got a lot of malls and a lot of, what do you call that, shops all over the country. So we'll be here, nice to hear from his perspective. He's also the Talent Development Committee there. And then we have the speakers with us, Simon and Mr. Leong, who is also down here with us, and we will let them share with us some insights. Like I said, it's not going to be a long drawn talk. We are going to get to the point, share the information. There's going to be networking, tea, and you know, cakes and everything. Let's just enjoy this moment. Thank you so much for being here.
Hello everyone.
Hi.
Good afternoon. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So happy to be here. And just to let you know that the nearest Aeon is 10 minutes away in One Utama. After this we can go together. Alright. So thank you Sudev for the invitation. Good to know that it's from Penang.
Yes.
Alright. And I'm deeply honored, and together with me from MRA we have Evelyn and Surin. Cannot live without them. They are the anchor orang kuat of MRA. So congratulations for Ambersoft for having this event, and we look forward to know more and to learn. For example, like in MRA we have 135 members of all the retailers in Malaysia. For Aeon we have 200 outlets, we have 29 malls, and we have 3,000 tenants. Something that I think is very relevant for this session, and we'd like to know more, because we know for the fact that globalization, competition, technology, pandemic has all affected us, affected our lifetime, it's affected our life, and soon ChatGPT. I look forward to the future when I just need to go up front here, just type my speech, and the AI will do the rest. Wow, that will be heaven. Alright, with regards to AI, it is an opportunity for all of us, especially in this past challenging environment and pace. 20 years ago, I was For 20 over years, I was with oil and gas. I joined retail about 3 years ago. Now, only 3 years in retail industry, but I must say the dynamic, the fast environment, the people are just amazing. So, but there's a lot of things that needs to be done, and AI basically are very much needed for oil and gas. We know for the fact that costs continue to increase and impacted us a lot. Not just with regards to the EA revision, not just with regards to the utilities, not just with regards to the minimum wages and so on. A lot of costs will go on. TNB is going to increase as well. For us to continue to be relevant, to survive in the retail world, we must basically adopt as quickly as possible AI. It's no longer a must-have. It's no longer something that we can live without. It's a necessity. So the faster we adopt not just AI but also technology, is better for all of us. So with that, thank you very much. I look forward to be here to learn, to know more with regards to this and how we can basically bring it in our company and basically expand it further. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kasuma. Thank you for a bit of insight on what you guys do in MRA and everything. I think you guys are doing a great job. I think the convention is Simon is going to be speaking at the convention. He's also a panelist, I believe, and so it's basically educating and getting familiar and getting to know and being aware of what to do. Let me invite Simon now to the stage, and he will share with us for the next 40 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, on behalf of Sukhdev and his team at Ambersoft and my co-founder, Mrs. Petra Fontaine, it is a great pleasure to be here today from Sydney. I'd like to start off with a little joke. So being a keynote speaker is much like a sort of body at an Irish wake. You need one, but don't expect too much from it. So, with that in mind, I'll try and be better than a coffin at an Irish wake. I'm really looking forward to delivering this speech. So, the topic today is how AI is transforming commercial lease management. So let's just start off with a quick quiz. Has anyone heard of Google Unicorn? Put your hand up if you've heard of Google Unicorn. Okay, so Google Unicorn is the new Google language transformer, which is trained on 1 trillion parameters. ChatGPT was trained on several 100 million. So it's rumoured to be hundreds of times faster than ChatGPT. And we all know what ChatGPT is doing. So this is now Unicorn. So this technology is now moving and it's so fast and is so powerful that it's disrupting every aspect of business, law, arts, education, and the commercial real estate sector is no exception. In our industry, lease abstraction, portfolio management, market research are all being disrupted by AI technologies. So for the next 25 to 30 minutes, I'm going to take you on a journey of the evolution of AI, and I'm going to present several case studies of how AI can be used within your organisations to make you more efficient, to increase profits, and to reduce costs. So by way of introduction, I'm Simon Fontaine. I'm the founder of Accurait with Petra. At the end of 2021, we exited the business and sold it to a leading PropTech investor called FLNT. So let's start quickly with an overview of how did we get to these transformers. So, as Sukhdev said, the first evolution of language processing as we know it was with OCR. So everyone remembers when you used to scan in a document and then you used to be able to pick out, oh, I want the address, I want the name, I want the rent. The problem with that system was that if it moved slightly, then the information and the model failed. And that was the first iteration of it. The next iteration began in the 2000s with the increase or massive increase in computational power. So they developed models called neural networks, and in combination with something called semantic analysis, they were able to read text that didn't rely on the position within a document. So here's a typical example was, let's take the child's nursery rhyme, the cow jumped over the moon. If you fed that AI that sentence, it would remember the sequence, and it would remember that a cow is in that sequence, a cow is an adult calf, and jump as in to leap. The trouble with that model was that it only worked for very short sentences. Fast forward to today, and we now have 4 super powerful language models. In 2017, Google released its first AI language model called the Transformer, and it focused on one revolutionary concept, which was the attention mechanism. And that allowed these transformers to remember long sentences. And in these sentences, they were able to capture text and predict with great accuracy what the next word would be. So if you look at this slide there, you can see there are 4 language models. The most famous is the GPT model, which stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. These are very powerful models for text abstraction. So you can use it for lease analysis, for rental analysis, you can use it for clauses and definitions, and you can use it to summarize legal disputes. The only problem with that model is it only looks one way, it looks backwards. The next family of models is called the bidirectional encoder-decoder. And what they do is that looks both ways. So they're several times more powerful than the GPT model. Google has released the BERT model and the BART model. And these are extremely powerful for analysing detailed information in clauses. So for example, let's say you're in dispute with your landlord or you're in dispute with your tenant. You can summarise all your obligations by asking it questions. How much rent do I have to forfeit if we forego this lease? What's my make-good obligations? It's very, very powerful in eliciting responses based on dialogue. The third model is called the pre-trained language models, and these are, there's 2 examples of them. One is Google Lambda and Meta's Llama. And these are actually free-flowing chatbots. So you can feed it information about, say for example, you own a shopping centre, and the shopping centre has a number of different issues around maintenance. So instead of putting a human at the centre of it, it can create dialogue and triage problems. It can triage, for example, oh, the lift's broken down, and it actually can order, connected to other technology, can actually order repairs and maintenance. So these are extremely powerful tools that are disrupting the whole value chain of retail and commercial real estate. The fourth one, which is the parallel language models, which is I just mentioned, there's Palm and Google Unicorn. These models are trained on over 100 languages. And unfortunately, they're going to put a lot of pressure on information providers, because they're able to translate with great accuracy across hundreds of languages. So they can actually work out the legal nuances of any particular lease. So these are the four major models of transformers and their application for this market. I'm going to work through some case studies on how you can use Accurait within your organisation. So we're going to do 5 use cases. The first is how to use confidence intervals to pre-approve up to 70 clauses and definitions in your lease. The second is how to use the tool to check continuously that you're invoicing your tenant or you're paying your landlord the correct rent. Because in leases, the rents are always changing. The third is how to manage the complex parent-child relationships in leases. The fourth is how to auto-generate critical dates. And the fifth is to manage and recall key clauses in leases. So, and next, a new iteration of the software which is going to be brought out in the next couple of months is Q&A bots linked to voice. So, for example, you may be in dispute with your landlord and you can ask the Accurait system to be able to triage, for example, I've got a lease at 15 Bukit Batam Strip. I want to interrogate what are my make good obligations, what are my obligations around defect, what are my obligations around bank guarantees, around rental, and it will send you responses on the fly to your phone, or actually will speak it back to you. So this is where the technology is actually going. Okay, so I'm going to go through how Accurait is actually disrupting the lease abstraction process. I'm going to go through a couple of screenshots, and I'm going to give you a live demo. So the first case is, in leases there are up to 70 clauses and definitions that the system auto-abstracts. And anyone who's been responsible for administering leases knows it's a very time-consuming, laborious, and error-prone exercise. And in the current environment where you have high levels of compliance, such as, for example, lease accounting, you can't afford to have any errors in the value chain. So this system automates that process. It uses something called confidence intervals to pre-approve leases and takes you to the exact position within the lease as to where it got that information. And I'll show you that in a minute. It also provides you with a snippet of that key information. The next use case relates to checking rental invoices. Hands up here who has ever signed a lease in this company. So whether you're a lessor or lessee, hands up if you've ever signed a lease. There we go. There's a few. So you know when you sign the lease, you're contracted to that lease for X number of years. And those obligations are as strong as a mortgage. So how do you know that what you're paying continuously is correct? As you get bigger with more leases, it becomes more and more complex. So by having an automation tool, you're able to continuously check against the contract so you don't under or overpay. The third use case relates to critical dates in leases. So I was just chatting to a gentleman before here who's got a number of restaurants, and he was basically telling me that he can't afford to lose any key sites. So for him, keeping track of expiries, options, market rent reviews in a systematic way is absolutely vital to the success of his business. So by automating that process and sending diary reminders and text reminders on critical dates, he's able to rest easy knowing that his business is secure. And the same from the landlord's perspective. The landlord is also responsible for managing these critical dates. So by automating this system and tying it to a verification process, you're able to systematize and manage it seamlessly. The next one relates to parent-child relationships of leases. So I believe in Malaysia, like in Australia, there are a number of variations in documents. So when you sign a lease, you may have a yearly variance, and this creates complexity because you need to be able to understand the chain of events that led to the current rent. If you don't have a system in place that automates that, you're going to make mistakes. And if you're like a very large mall owner and you're relying on manual processes in Excel, you're going to be exposed to systematic error and risk. And that's what AI and automation Accurait does. It basically seamlessly manages the complexities in leases. The last use case we're going to talk about, which Sukhdev stole my thunder, is basically clauses and definitions bank. So there are literally hundreds of clauses in leases that can trip you up from a lessor and lessee's perspective. Everything from air conditioning maintenance to demolition clause to defits to, for example, turnover rent provisions. All this information has to be managed and it has to be sent to third-party systems. So if you're an accountant, I'm speaking to a gentleman here, you have to comply with IFRS 16. You have to capitalise those leases on the balance sheet. If you're a landowner, you have to send notifications to your facilities management company for routine maintenance on your air conditioning plant and equipment. That's all governed by the lease. I'll give you another recent case study. We recently rolled this product out for New Balance. New Balance is a global retail chain. They have almost 1,000 stores worldwide. And what we found was they were making systematic errors around a number of different parts of their business. So, for example, they were systematically overpaying rent because they weren't correctly calculating the rent increases. And over the course of 3 months, we saved them USD almost $1 million in contracted rent. Simply by auditing their lease obligations, people were routinely not keeping that information up to date, and they were overpaying, in many cases, by a lot, or they weren't getting their rental rebates correct. So by having an automated system, they were able to save that money and to seamlessly integrate with their other systems. So I'm now going to do a live demo of our system and to take you through how you can use it in your business.
While Simon is setting that up, if you all have any question, please feel free to ask so that it can be addressed at the same time.
So do you have a system for merchandising, for example, like looking at rebates and all that?
Sorry?
Do you have a similar system for merchandising team to calculate rebates and follow up, for example?
That's under development. That's a sister sort of development that we're looking at. Yes, we do. We have it under development, but it's not available at the moment for release. So I'm going to log into Accurait and show you how to use it. I'm just going to go through the use cases that we discussed. So just quickly by way of example, just to understand who was behind us. So whilst we developed the product, it wasn't really done purely by ourselves. We had millions of dollars worth of grants from the federal government. So we got the CSIRO Data 61, which is the preeminent machine learning organisation in Australia, and they helped build these algorithms. And then we've continued to build our own transformer models that are proprietary.
Simon, this data, where does the data sit? It sits in our server, right?
Yeah, so it's fully containerized for security. So we comply with 27,000 and SOC 2, so that the system is secure. And I will, actually, a really good question. I'll touch on why some of these other open models are not secure, because that, for example, with ChatGPT, you actually have to send the data across to the US. So that's an issue. So?
I'm also happy to answer any questions while they're getting the technology sorted. Does anyone else have a question at this point? One thing that I'll mention is that I've spoken to a couple of people in the room, and some of you are accounting management systems, so Colliers Jardine or different large managers of retail assets. So in those cases, you might be in charge of a bank portfolio, or you might be in charge of other sort of conglomerate. So the way you're getting the information is it could be in quite a disorganised fashion, and your role is to manage all that information. So that's something that you just have to do. So instead of laboriously going through each and every lease, and it might be all very disorganised, this is a way of structuring things and systematising it. So as a property lease manager, it can be extremely difficult to manage different types of leases. So it just sort of gives you a bit of an example of how the system can be used.
Sorry, excuse me.
Yes.
Just a question. I know it's located for property and for lease and property. What about assets?
Yes. So you're talking about like what sort of assets, like fleet cars or like machinery?
Leasing on cars and assets, because you do have some of our customers that have very expensive assets, and those assets are all in lease.
Yes.
And how much can this cater for not just on property lease but also on assets?
That's a really good question, and I think that really the answer is that the technology is available. It's something that we've definitely been developing in Australia, especially in the mining industry. There's a lot of requirements, and we have a lot of mining in Australia, so it's equipment leasing. Like companies like like there's different companies in Australia that they provide.
Even for retailers.
Yeah.
So some of them are got chillers and stuff on their operations.
Yes.
And so is this something that you can also extend, not just the tenancy, but also assets?
It's definitely something that we're developing, and FLNT is at the forefront of all these sorts of systems which we are developing. At the moment, we are providing the retail leasing, or like the leasing system for the property industry, but definitely something that can be used across many different industries. I was speaking to someone who's involved in the medical industry, so in terms of dialysis machines, blood pressure machines, all sorts of things within hospitals where, you know, you have to manage the equipment, you've got to do the maintenance, you need to make sure that all the equipment is the latest and up to date. So it definitely can be used for other types of leasing requirements. So yeah, it's the thing about this particular system that we are very proud of is that we're the largest online providers of retail leasing intelligence in Australia. So this system was trained on millions of leases, which we extracted and we've analysed. So this is very specific for property and leasing. So we feel extremely confident that we'll be providing property leasing managers exactly what they need. And we're very excited about working, with our, with Malaysia and Singapore to find out what, requirements you have. I think one of the most exciting things about being in Malaysia is that you've got such huge scope for retail here. Your malls are massive. Our malls are quite small in comparison. You've got a much larger population. You've got more people who, who own shops, and so we see that it's a real economy of scale here. And you've got one property leasing manager or a couple of property leasing managers who are managing, thousands of leases, sometimes tens of thousands of leases. And as these systems become bigger, it's like they're like motherships. They're like, shopping centre owners, obviously acquiring larger and larger shopping centres. The portfolios are getting larger. One of the people mentioned before, though, this is now a real global issue. And with the AI now being able to read all languages, we're talking about global management as well. Being able to globalise property portfolios. So it's all moving extremely quickly. The technology has been developed over a 12-year period, and the whole idea has been completely transformed in the last 12 years. So, I think that these are moving fast, but very good questions. And has anyone else got a question that they have?
Okay, here we go.
Just one more.
Yeah.
We were talking about retailers using this solution.
Yeah.
What about mall operators, mall owners? Could you just share, from both perspectives,
Absolutely.
how it benefits both sides?
So in terms of the mall owners, obviously you're wanting to make sure that your tenancy mix is working. You're wanting to make sure that the rent that you're charging is optimised, that you're using the data and analysing the data. You've got smart people in your organisation who are managing the whole portfolio. You've got, for example, making sure that what sites your retailers are wanting, the details of the leasing. In Australia, we have created systems whereby this sort of information has been incorporated into like a walkthroughs where shopping centre owners can walk through a shopping centre with an iPad. They can touch the screen on the different shops and come up with the information, what rent's being paid, all the terms of the lease, when the lease is expiring. They compare it across total portfolios. So, there's an opportunity to be really integrating this information for the owners of shopping centres. They're with so many leases to manage. It's they're probably going to be getting even more out of it than than smaller retailers.
Okay, so sorry about that with the internet. We just had a slight problem with it, but I'm just going to give you a live demo of the system. So you can see here on the dashboard, we have, these are all Australian-based leases. The reason being is because the information in Australia is public and we're not breaching any privacy issues, so we didn't want to display any Malaysian leases because of the Privacy Act here. So I'm just going to take you through a case study of how you can actually use the system within your organisation. So if I click here, I can see this is on the left-hand side what we call the key fields. And on the right-hand side is a copy of the lease, which is a PDF version, which has been scanned. So what the system does is it detects, using AI, where in the document you've got it. So you can see here it found it, and it also took a snippet of that information. So say, for example, Aon Malls is in dispute with their tenant. Instead of having to rifle through the lease, they can just simply email it and it will get sent to the appropriate party. So in terms of approval process, it's extremely efficient and it locks the data in. So you can see exactly where you've got it in the lease. So you can't make a mistake. If you repeat that over 70 clauses and definitions, you're going to get a huge amount of time saved. And you can see it's found this with 95% precision. So it's 95, nothing's 100%, but it's 95% sure that that's the right answer. So if you replicate that over a lot of leases, like say for example, you have hundreds of leases in the mall, you can actually process these leases in seconds, as opposed to typically it takes an hour to administer this lease correctly. So the time saving is enormous. You remember my chat around transforming AI? So all this information is actually being read. It's not related to the position in the lease. If I want to index key information such as, for example, expiry date, all I need to do is automate that and say, okay, I want to be reminded 3 months before and set an email date, and it'll now be reminded. So it's extremely powerful for indexing your key information. And another tool is, let's say, for example, you didn't think that information was right, or you actually did a deal with your landlord to temporarily change it. So you can make a note in the system. So, okay, it's changed. And it will note that. Okay, so that's just a live example that we use to show how easy it is to extract the key information within the lease. The next use case which I was referring to relates to what we said with New Balance. So I'll give you a worked example of how you can use it to save rent in your organisation. So the system calculates with precision the exact rent based on the lease. How does it do that? It takes the review structures within the lease, whether they be fixed or CPIs, and projects them correctly so that you know exactly what rent you should be paying. So in this case, this is a mall lease. It's got both a rent and a marketing levy. So you can see that based on this financial year or this calendar year, you should be paying $16,000 in marketing levy and $597 in rent. And then you can use that to compare against invoices via invoice checker method to continuously check that you're paying the right contracted amount. So in this case, New Balance, this tool alone saved them over $1 million a year. It's like a massive audit tool. They were like astonished at how many errors they were making, just simply by computational errors. So that's use case 2. Use case 3 is by indexing the key clauses, I can see what my reminders are. So I don't ever miss a reminder. So here are all my reminders which I can export to Excel or I can email. So all your key things like options, expiries, they're all in one central spot. And you just cannot miss any of that information. So you also remove the human in the loop. So you're not reliant on any one party. I can also use the system, let's say for example you're Aon Malls and you've got a number of different subdivisions or different mall structures. I can use the system and partition the software, so I can, like for example, look at just a mall, or I can look at a particular retailer, like Daiso, so I can segment the data whichever way I want in sub-companies. We mentioned the parent-child relationship of leases, so I'm going to give you an example of how this manages it. So here, this is a KFC, which I noticed you have them here too. So the original lease was for $297,000, you can see that there, and it had 2 by 10-year options. The lease was subsequently varied such that the original base rent was changed midway through the lease to $310,000, which you can see here, and the options were varied to nil. So unless you had a system to capture that, you're going to miss that information, and then your rental information is going to be incorrect. So this seamlessly manages that process. So if I want a summary of that information, I can simply go to my lease summary, and I can see here that the original rent was $310 or $297 with 2 10-year options. The variations are summarised here, and if I look at my current deal, which can then be exported, you can see the estimated current rent is $318 and options have been varied to nil. So it manages that whole process. And I believe in Malaysian leases it's very common to have this sort of process. So you can imagine the efficiencies that you can create within your portfolio if you had a tool like this. Probably one of the biggest use cases, which Sukhdev touched on, is once you have all the information indexed, you can actually, like for example, say you have a portfolio at Aon Malls, you've got hundreds and hundreds of leases. Instead of rifling through key documents, I can ask the system to show me all the leases with a bank guarantee. And it will produce that clause. So if I go just do that again. So if I want to go bank guarantee, I want to show this clause. Instead of you rifling through it, it's going to show the bank guarantee clause. So you can see here it's an amount equal to 3 months base rent, and that's where it got in the system. So it's literally saved you hundreds of hours of rifling through that information. You can also do the opposite. So if you're auditing, I want to see all the leases that don't have a bank guarantee. And then it will bring up all the ones that don't have a bank guarantee. So then you might want to ask, why do they not have a bank guarantee? Another use case is in leases, is, for example, show me all the leases that have a guarantor. So you can see here, the guarantor is David Dye, and it's a copy of where that information was abstracted. So you have that key information contained within your lease. So literally, for example, in the case of New Balance, they were able to save thousands of hours of lease abstraction just by simply indexing the information, and they were able to keep those snippets at the touch of their button. Whenever they need that information, they could instantly recall it. Exporting data out of the system is very, very easy. So you can create CSVs, so every single item can be exported to CSV. The data is fully secure, so we're setting up our own instance here in Malaysia and Singapore, so all the data will be hosted in locally here. So they are fully containerized and secure.
So you're saying that the data is kept in our server or your server?
So you have two options. If you have an on-premise server, we can create what's called a hybrid instance. So it sits within your premises. If you use a cloud solution, we can actually create your own instance that's solely yours. So you can create, it's a non-partition, non-tenanted. So if you will probably have your own, I don't know if your software is probably hosted in the cloud, but you would probably be big enough to have your own instance. So we would replicate that. Yeah. Also, with privacy issues, we are working on the Malaysian Privacy Act, so keeping information confidential and private and secure. Are there any other questions on privacy or security or any other information relating to this product before I wrap up? Okay, I've got, yes, sir.
Do you have any other examples how companies can reduce the cost by using this?
How they can reduce costs or increase revenue? Yeah, sure. One of the other areas that retailers and landlords use it is for managing key clauses and definitions. So if you look at a lease, say for example, within a lease, you don't just have financial obligations, you also have obligations relating to a number of different areas. So for example, you might have insurance obligations, public liability, you have maintenance obligations. So this system manages that process for you by indexing that information, and can be passed to a third-party provider. So for a big mall like this, they literally have millions of dollars worth of obligations, which is actually driven from the lease. The lease is dictating how often they need to manage the servers, the chillers. That information needs to be abstracted and sent to an FM system for routine and non-routine maintenance. It can also be used for tracking, for example, tenants' obligations around rights to trade. So what are their obligations? Are they trading from 9 to 5? So trading obligations. Are there any exclusivity obligations relating to their lease? Do they have rights in relation to redevelopment? So it's a one-stop shop for managing all your obligations under a lease.
And just sort of on top of that, I think the one thing which has been really interesting for us, because we've actually been using the system in Australia for a long time, is that what happens is that when people use the system, they use it as an auditing process because they know that there are problems, or something's happened and they've missed a critical date, or people have left the job and that person has taken with them all that information. So, and they're wondering, are we getting this right? Are we invoicing properly? So, as an auditing tool is incredibly sophisticated and very detail oriented. So it's really being developed with that leasing manager and CFO in mind. So we really, it's in partnership with, it's kind of an interesting system because it's kind of being designed in partnership with the legal aspects of running a business, the financial aspects of running the business, but also the people side of running the business. So, making sure that, they're, touching base with the lessee, making sure that their legal obligations and as Simon said, but now it's become quite important in terms of the whole facilities management piece as well.
There is one other big obligation that the accountants in the room know about, which is a multi-billion-dollar. Hands up if you're an accountant. Any accountants in the room? I know there is one because I was talking to him. They're too scared to say, but there's a new, well, it's not new, but it's been around since 2019 called IFRS 16, which Malaysians have to comply with, which means you have to capitalise your leases on balance sheet. So that means that this is bigger retailers, they need to continuously account for their liability under a lease. It's a very big financial obligation. So you need to take the information from the lease, project it forward via a net present value calculation, and estimate continuously what the liability is under lease and amortise it. So that's another use case for this system. It basically manages that process by ingesting the data from the lease and passing it to, say, a SAP or an Oracle or another financial system to automate that process. So that's that's one of the main big use cases for this system. So for example, we've been working with Deloitte. I'm sure you've got Deloitte here in Australia and PwC around the use case for this system. We're also finding that it's becoming increasingly useful for government. So in Australia, we're in a tender, we're the lead runner for the land registry services, and I believe Malaysia has the same titling system as we do. So why would land registry need this information? Because in Malaysia, like in Australia, we stamp a lease. So if you could get a system that basically calculated the amount of rent automatically and work out its stamp value, then it becomes extremely powerful for land registry services. Same for big landlords. They need to do valuations of their, they need to value their cash flows going forward. So you can use the system to calculate the cash flows based on the rents. And you can also bring in other information like turnover, rent, foot traffic, etc. to project your cash flows forward for valuation. Okay, the last question I'm going to ask myself, it's a rhetorical question. So one question that's often been asked is, given that there's all these new technologies around, like I just mentioned the 4, ChatGPT, etc., why Accurait? What's so special about it? So there's a number of reasons why Accurait is becoming the market leader. The first is that our technologies are proprietary. We don't rely on ChatGPT. ChatGPT, you have to send the data to the US and it has to come back. So, for example, Airline, that won't comply with their requirements. Same with the Malaysian government. So they won't be able to use open source. So we have a closed source, secure natural language processing models that we own. The second is that our data is but trained on deep domain knowledge. So we have deep domain knowledge around property, around leasing, and with Sukdev and Ambersoft, we're developing deep domain knowledge around the Malaysian and Singaporean leasing market. So we're able to customize the software for all use cases relating to the local market. So that's a very big reason why, and point of difference, why we're putting these technologies in your hands to increase your profits and reduce expenses. I'm sorry about the technical problems we had before. I hope that you found this presentation interesting and informative. I'll be around for the rest of the week, and I'll be here for the Malaysian Retailers Association conference. But if you want a private in-house demo, or you want to run through any use cases with me for your organisation, please feel free to come and see myself or Petra or Jagdev, and we can organise a private demo for your company and provide you with further information as required. Thank you, and look forward to chatting with you soon.
Thank you so much. What an impressive product.
Yeah, I'm so glad.
So good. Yeah, I think so. Because the idea is to transform, to automate, and hopefully this will give us a bit of insight on how AI technology can be used to facilitate such things. The other thing that came to my mind, which maybe some of you all might not have asked, is one of the challenges within scanning and capturing information is always the changing nature of the leases. Because if I'm issuing the lease, I at least have a standard template. But when I'm getting leases from different landlords, say like Aeon or Speedmart or 7-Eleven, they are getting different leases from different landlords. So you have to actually train it for everyone. That's always a headache, because how do I capture that information? With AI, I do not even have to worry about that anymore, because I just scan it in. It is going in and looking through everything, just like transformers do. That's what it means. GPT is transformers. And it's been trained for leases. It understands the terminology, it looks for those words, it highlights those words and brings them up to the information. So, that way it becomes free. You are no more tied down to a particular format or whatever. And that's always been the holy grail, because same thing for invoices. When we were helping customers to manage their invoices, different invoices were coming in from different companies, and there's no standard template for invoices. You can have many different clauses, many different conditions. Being able to understand that within one scan, within 10 minutes or 15 minutes, as Simon has mentioned, we saw it in action. We gave them a few of the leases that we have in KLCC and a few other places, and it was just able to pull all that data with minimal correction. And what happens is, because it's machine learning, we are actually even taking it one step forward. It's like learning, constant improvement. It understands what you did, how you corrected the last item, and it's learning as it goes on. So that's basically the power of AI. Bless you. Thank you so much again. We will pass on to Mr. Leong, and also we'll have a little short session for tea. We are just serving the tea at the same time. Help yourself, sit down, and let's try to get a bit of perspective in terms of from Mr. Leong himself. Thank you. So let me just set this up. In the meantime, while they are setting it up, any other questions that come to your mind? We have Night Frank here. We've got quite a few others. I was talking to one of my partners just now, who happens to run this Tasty Chapati chain of restaurants. They also run Borneo Pearls. Jagdish there, and a lot of leases are also tied down to certain conditions. Like in your case, I think it was the revenue, right? They actually tied the what do you call it, the lease amount to pay to revenues, and that can also be captured. So that's like, wow, yes, it is flexible enough to be adapted to different environments, different scenarios, and different situations. In fact, they're going to be our first client. We already signed them up, and we are on with these leases, and we are going to go ahead and go on with it. Aeon, Doctor had to leave. He had another appointment, and he apologized. He says he'll introduce us to the leasing manager on Thursday, so you'll do your magic there.
He was talking a lot, nodding a lot.
Yeah. I think he's very familiar with that area, and I think they are big operators. And I'm sure a lot of you all, it doesn't have to be big operators, seriously, because we are talking about even smaller companies that are running 10 or 5 outlets, and you need to manage it. You can easily do that with this and make it more efficient. Without much ado, let me pass to Mr. Leong, and he will share a little bit on CBM.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much to Jeff for inviting me for this event. I will be sharing a little bit about financing and credit ratings to everybody, just to give the people a little bit of an idea about financing, because I have been in the banking line for 21 years and I just moved over to the credit rating agency. Okay, so just to share about my insights and maybe it will add more value to what you are doing. So basically, I'm going to share with you the Malaysian financial landscape. I was previously from OCBC Bank. I've been there for almost 19 years. Then I moved to Hong Leong, and subsequently I moved into Credit Guarantee Corporation, which is a subsidiary of Bank Negara. And now I'm in Credit Bureau Malaysia. Credit Bureau Malaysia is actually a subsidiary of Sunway Holdings Berhad. Okay, many people may not know about it, but it's a fairly small company. It started in somewhere 2008, and I will share with you a little bit more about this credit bureau. It is actually a credit rating agency, and every time when you go to borrow money from the bank, most of the time the banks will actually use a credit rating agency to check on your financial health, right? So many times if you go to the hospital, you actually be doing a medical check on yourself, see how healthy you are. So similarly in the banks, when you want to take up a financing, or you want to take up any credit cards, even credit cards or anything, you would actually need to go through a credit rating agency. The banks would use a credit rating agency. And there are another 2 credit rating agencies in the market which could be more popular than us, alright, which is Experian as well as CITOS, right? I've been in this business only 4 months. My duty is to actually bring up CBN, because I was previously from CGC and all the time banking line. So I've been tasked to actually move this business up and create a new competitor to CITOS, right? So in terms of credit rating agencies, we were actually the first one to be in the market, which is in 2008. But not many people knew about us was because it was very quiet at that point in time. So Sunway Holdings bought over in 2020, right? We wanted it to be part of the digital bank, but they did not get the digital bank, but they said that why not turn it into another division of Sunway, which is the fintech. So I've been tasked to look at this CBM, Credit Bureau Malaysia, and create another division for Sunway Holdings. I'm sure many of you have heard of Sunway with all the education, the hospitality and all that. So this will be the new division that Sunway will be looking at, which is the financial division. So since I've been in the banking line for so long, I wanted to share a little bit about the banking fraternity. There are a lot of people who come, and because I was in Bank Negara for a certain period of time, and there's always this complaint about people not able to get loans, especially during COVID. I've always been hearing, I've been working with government agencies and all that, we always hear that SMEs as well as individuals have a hard time getting loans and all that. I personally think that Malaysia is very blessed that we have so many agencies and banks which are giving out loans to SME as well as individuals. I think nowhere you can actually find that we have banks. Banks also, we have many types of banks. We have got commercial banks, we have got the Islamic banks, and we have got the developmental financial institutions. I don't think many places can actually have so many banks. Then you have the P2P lending, peer-to-peer lenders, all right? You hear the likes of funding societies, fantastic and all that. And these are all regulated. Many places that you go in terms of lending, you will not see this type of companies being regulated. So in terms of lending, there is also this equity crowdfunders in the market too. And for P2P lenders, they are actually being regulated by the Securities Commission. So really, there are a lot of other parties. You also have government agencies, the likes of MARA, Tekun, and Angkasa, which are giving out loans to many SMEs as well as to individuals. And last but not least, we also have credit companies, Aeon Credit, Upsing Credit, and many other types of credit companies. So what I'm trying to say to you is that in Malaysia, it's just a matter of whether are you hardworking enough to go and search for loans and grants. There are really a lot. So I have seen so many people telling me that they have got trouble getting loans and all that. So maybe I'll go into the next part of the understanding of why people are not able to get loans. So what happens in banks, how they work is that, like what I said, they will use credit rating agencies. And what they will do is that they will check your profile, they will check your secrets, and they will also check your other behaviors. Sometimes, whether do you pay your phone bills on time, whether do you pay your electricity bills on time and all that. These are all ways of them checking through to see whether are you a good paymaster. If you are a good paymaster, the chances of you getting a loan will definitely be very high. Because if you talk to each and every one of the bankers, especially those handling financing, they will tell you year on year their targets get higher. Never have you seen that people who, the bankers, the lending gets lower. So it shows that everybody has a target to reach, which is higher lending amount. So many a times, what we will do at credit rating agencies is that there are 3 credit rating agencies in Malaysia. They are able to pull the secrets report and come up with a score for the banks. And the banks, using some of their criteria together with our score, will then determine whether this customer is it good to lend. So this is where you see if your score is a good score, okay, whether it's a company or individual, we will then lend to it. And this is where the credit rating agencies will then use our so-called technology, which is our rating, as well as our behavioral scores. There is this thing called behavioral scores. The behavioral scores will actually look at the behavior of each and every individual. We will be able to identify the types of behavior that they are having, your spending pattern, and many other ways that you pay and how you behave. So credit rating agencies will then start to use alternative data too to actually understand each and everybody's behavior. There are banks which are using psychometric data, whereby they are able to ask you a few questions and to know what type of behaviors you are having. So these are the things that the banks as well as credit rating agencies are doing to identify whether a person is a good paymaster, right? So of course, if your score is good, the banks will definitely lend to you. If the scores are no good, you will not be lending to your customer. And many a times people will be asking, why is it that the banks make so much money, but you're not taking risk? Why are you doing so much of this credit rating? You're making so much money at the banks. Why are you not taking risks? You have to also understand from the bank's perspective that banks are also depositors. So they owe the obligations to the depositors. People put in money, savings account or fixed deposit. So they owe the obligation to these customers that are paying this deposit and giving out these deposits to ensure that the loans don't turn non-performing, right? So that is the reason why the banks will continue being risk adverse in this sense. So this is where how credit bureau or all these credit rating agencies will work. Okay, so we will be getting secret data, we will be getting financial statements. All these are with the consent of the customer. Bear in mind that because these are all lending products and services, we always will get the consent from the customers. And so this is where we will have secret data, the financial statements of the customer, legal records, and as well as alternative data. And what we will do in credit bureau is that we will analyze this data, put in more machine learning. Machine learning is where the AI will come in, whereby we will study these customers for years and years and years. Most of the time, if we have this data, and then we will be able to derive whether this customer falls under what type of portfolio and whether they are bankable or not. And this is where we will make a credit score, right? So, what does it mean that we will have a good rating? So, as you can see, when the digital banks are also coming up, and you see many of these banks, what is going to be different is that every customer will be risk-based differently. So, when you just say have a credit card, you'll notice that a lot of the credit cards, everybody is having an 18% per annum credit card. That is not risk-based. If you are a good paymaster, technically speaking, we should be having maybe 12%, 13% type of interest rate for your credit card. So many times the banks are trying to move towards risk-based, whereby if you have a good credit standing, you will get a better rate. So the banks are also moving towards using credit rating as a determinant factor on your pricing. So many a times they are trying to do this, but they have not done that successfully yet. But I think through time, with more credit rating agencies playing their part to score these customers accurately, you will see that the customers' behavior financially will actually be the determinant of interest rate. The other thing that is very apparent in the years that I worked with in terms of customers' behavior is also, there are many customers who always declare, especially SMEs, who always declare that they are making losses and losses. So when customers declare that they make losses, the chances of banks wanting to provide financing to them obviously diminishes, because bank would not lend to customers who are actually showing financial statements that they are losing money. Because if you are losing money, how can the bank justify to lend to you? So many a times the SMEs wanted to do this is because they want to save tax. They don't want to pay tax. But the downside is that when your business wants to grow, you are not able to find the banks that can support you, because you are actually showing years and years of financial losses. So using AI and all that hopefully will change some of the behaviors, in the sense that banks as well as credit reporting agencies like us will not just look at financial statements, we will look at bank statements, we will look at other types of forms of alternative data, like the sales that you've done, the invoice that you've done, so that we are able to assess you better in that sense, not just on historical, but on future. So there are many things that we talk about, alternative data and all that. It's really very much onto future data and not just on historical data, right? So this is just a very brief perspective of some of the things that I wanted to share. So again, it talks about assessing creditworthiness of clients, determining the reliability of suppliers. There are a lot of SMEs who actually wants to deal with another SME, but you do not know how is their financial standing. So this is where credit rating agencies are also being used to determine how is this SME performing and all that. There are many other things that we are also looking at. One example was about rentals and all that. There will be customers who wanted to rent a place in a mall and all that. They will not know whether this is a good paying customer. But if you were to use a credit rating agency to check the behavior of the customer, you will then know better how this SME or individual is performing. So there are many of these users of this credit rating agency. And just to also share with you is that there are a lot of new trends coming up. We now see, or it's already apparent that you can see loans given by the banks are generally much longer in nature, but you can see now you have this buy now, pay later, right? Very short-term type of loans. Things like shoes, people can't, $50 shoe, people can't afford to buy a $50 shoe immediately. So they will break it up into 3 installments to pay. This is buy now, pay later. So there are a lot of all these new technology and new things coming up in the market. So I think Malaysia is in a very good position. I was just at another meeting just now, checked by Zafu. We are looking at a digital platform in Madrid. So I guess the moving forward is all about digitalization, and I do hope that many of the SMEs here and many individuals, you will actually try to embrace technology. Don't be afraid of technology, because that's the only way moving forward. And really, I think there is, when you embrace technology, there is cost savings and revenue uplift if you do it correctly. All right. Thank you so much. I just don't want to take so much of your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leong. That was very insightful. I think some of y'all are retailers here, individuals. It's always a mystery, how do these credit rating people judge us and help or can help us. So Leong is going to be around. Please do ask him any questions. Again, like I said, the theme is to empower ourselves, to have that knowledge, to be able to make decisions, to improve our businesses, to improve our processes. And that's the whole idea of us getting together. Tea is going to be served now. The session is over, but Simon, Mr. Leong, and MRA, the different groups are all here. So do have a chat with them. Do find out a bit more. And if you need, like Simon said, if you want us to come and show you all a working product, how it works and how it will be applied, please feel free to contact us. My team is also here and we can arrange that. Similarly, give us your feedback at the same time. You have our contact details. What kind of things do you want to see, or what kind of examples? We can even organize, not something on site, but we can also do like a webinar, a simple webinar where we can just share some of these questions and just have a follow-up. I think it's good to empower ourselves, and thank you again for everyone to be here. Hopefully we will get together again soon and get together. Thank you. Thank you. The tea is served. The tea is served, and samosas and a lot of Indian goodies. And please do help yourselves.